Good morning, Delaware. Happy April. Hope things are going well for you. I know this is the second Friday in April, but we didn't say it last week because it was April Fool's Day. You already it would have been a joke not to say it.
Nobody would have trusted us.
Nah, right.
And it could not happen with the library show.
That's right.
We can't make them not trust us.
No, they've got to trust us.
Yeah.
Yep. So, anyway, that's Nicole Fowles, who you hear on the cue for my 96.7.
I like things that are mine.
Yes. And this morning, I was listening really early this morning. I started listening right at 6 o'clock when the show came out.
Uh-oh.
And I heard the thing I recorded.
Oh, look at that.
They only put that on like when, during the PSAs for the National Cirrhosis Foundation.
They're meeting a different clientele. It's a different listener base.
So speaking of different, we have Mark Bingaman on the board today.
Hello.
Gage, if you're out there listening, we miss you, but, you should call that company that you do the ads for. And our guest today is Katy Hite. Hi, Katy.
Good morning, George and
Katy
Nicole.
is the Assistant Branch Manager for Adult Services at the Orange Branch Library, and she's here to talk about National Poetry Month and the poetry, which we will talk about in the second half of the show. Mm-hmm. So, Nicole, what you been listening to, reading, binging on?
I cannot stop laughing because I have continued on with the Emmy and Friends series by Terri Libenson. Terri, who we talked with just last week?
Just last week.
Just last week we talked with her about the series. And so we began, George and I had both read Invisible Emmy. We had discussed earlier this week that we had both continued on with Positively Izzy. And now I'm on the third one in the series, which is just Jaime. And, George, you asked me what Jaime's getting into. And this is heavy middle school stuff. This is, you've got two girls who have been best buddies since kindergarten. They've known each other forever. They gab about everything. They're just having the time of their lives. And then new friend comes in, and new friend is a bit of a mean girl. She kind of likes things, and mean girl in 7th grade is subjective, but she just really likes things her way. And girls who tend to like things their way tend to find people who also go along with other people who like things their way. They find little lemmings that just kind of corral along with them. So mean girl Celia befriends Jaime's kind of friend group, and as they are progressing and maturing in their middle school age, Celia and the rest of the group, start liking different things. They want to put on makeup. They want to talk about boys. They want to, wear like the really cute clothes for their changing bodies and everything along those lines. And Jaime's just not there yet. She's just not feeling it. She's like, no, actually, I kind of still like my Disney movies, and I don't really want to wear makeup, and I like my body the way it is, even though it's not changing yet. And so Celia has an idea that Jaime just doesn't fit in with the group anymore.
Her own group, yeah.
Exactly. So she tells Jaime's best friend, who, she's been besties with since kindergarten, that really she needs to be the one to tell Jaime that she's out. And she gets the boot. Right. I know. Middle school is cruel. And I think I shared this earlier that I was part of a group that had this happen in middle school. So this is not far from the truth. Right. Okay. So anyway, that's the gist of just Jaime. Yeah. And it is a good one. Like I said, it's a true story. I mean, like anyone can relate to this. This highly relatable. George and I were reminiscing that there's a twist in Positively Izzy that we both really enjoyed that you don't really pick up until like the last page of the book, which makes you go back and reread the entire book, which I appreciate that the book only took me an hour to read anyway, so I can go back and reread the book and really catch all those clues. But there's a twist in the first one. And I had no idea. I'm just disappointed in myself. Like I think I was just reading it in my middle school mindset, and I was like, of course they're two totally separate people. Beep, 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 beep. It was like a Tyler Durden. Is that kind of the thing? We don't talk about Fight Club. Yes, that's what's happening a little bit in the first one that I totally missed. Went right over my head. But
it's more like Who Killed Roger Ackroyd, because
where the narrator is actually the killer.
Yeah.
And you don't realize
Right.
it. So if anybody has never read that 100-year-old novel by Agatha Christie, I apologize for the spoiler.
Right.
But
You missed it.
yeah, right.
So that's just Jaime. Terri Libenson is going to be at the Delaware Main Library on Saturday, which is tomorrow if you're listening on Friday. And she's going to be there at 2 o'clock, and she's going to have a wonderful time with us.
We're really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, Katie, what are you listening to, reading, binging on, whatever?
Sure. Right now, I'm going to talk about this book I brought along with me called Steeped in Stories. It is by Mitali Perkins. The subtitle of this is Timeless Children's Novels to Refresh Our Tired Souls.
Oh.
And it is an excellent book. It's, first of all, the author gives a bunch of credit to libraries and librarians and children's literature in her life growing up. But this book focuses on 7 classic novels and what it means to go back and read them as adults.
Ah.
So I have a friend group that I met from library school, and we're using this as a virtual book discussion theme. But then we're reading all of the books within it. And it's fun for me because as an adult services librarian, I don't read a lot of youth things anymore. And so going back and reading some classics is really interesting. And the chapters here also address some of the maybe problematic themes in some older books and how to talk to kids today about some of those themes if they go back and read those books. So far I have revisited, after many years, Anne of Green Gables.
Okay.
Loved rereading that. That was amazing. And it changed how I felt about that book. It was great. I also read Heidi for the first time and thought that was a really fun thing to come back to. And it's interesting to see how these feel as a grown-up to read them when they're meant for kids.
Right.
But the other books in here are Emily of Deep Valley, which I had never read, The Hobbit, Little Women, A Little Princess, The Silver Chair, and then there are chapter and discussion questions in each chapter for how you can talk about these books once you read them. So I highly recommend this if you want to go back to the classics and also think about how to revisit those classics and talk to kids today about them.
Yeah.
So highly recommended.
So many of them have been made into movies, too, and at least 2 of them that were made into movies had Shirley Temple in them.
That's right. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
But, the funny thing is, of all of those, the only one I've read is Little Women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's
You never read The Hobbit?
I've tried like 4 times to read The Hobbit, and I just can't get into it.
Sure.
I just saw an audio version of it, and I thought maybe I'll try listening to the audio
Maybe.
version.
Hobbit's actually the
yeah.
only Tolkien one that I've done. I've not done any of the Lord of the Rings series.
I've read all of them. I read them once. I don't know if I need to read The Hobbit again.
You did it. You did it.
I
You
got
checked it
through
off the list.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Now, I like those choices, though. That could be really interesting. Nice way to. I wonder if we could form a book club around those.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
I think that'd be pretty popular.
Absolutely.
So, okay, I'm continuing my deep dive into William Kent Krueger right now, since he's coming to Delaware for a program with Friends of the Library later this month. And so I just finished reading the one that a lot of people consider his masterpiece, Ordinary Grace.
Okay.
And this was published in 2013. And it is the journey of the Drum family through the summer. The Drum family.
Really?
Only one M, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
I know.
I don't. The first time they said that, I thought, "Ooh, I wonder if they're really related to Nicole."
That's amazing.
Anyway, it's the summer of 1961. They're in a small town in Minnesota. Dad Nathan is a Methodist minister. Mom Ruth is a homemaker with a rich father who creates a little bit of uncomfortableness for Nathan. But she's also has a very unfulfilled avocation as a singer. Nathan was originally going to be a hotshot lawyer, was a brilliant lawyer, goes off to World War II, has a spiritual awakening, comes back a minister after he's married her. So she's got like these high-level aspirations for what her life is going to be like, and all of a sudden they're kind of,
Changed.
yeah. Mm-hmm. So the minister's life is not exactly like being a hotshot lawyer.
No.
So the oldest child, Ariel, is headed for Juilliard in the fall, preparing for a brilliant career as a pianist and a composer. She's a protege of an illustrious musician who is originally from this town in Minnesota, who's retreated there after being badly injured in World War II. Again, the idea of injured people runs through this novel everywhere. Let's see. So then there's Jake, who's the youngest son. He's kind of a sweet, naive kind of kid who absolutely loves his middle brother, who I'll talk about last. But he has this terrible stutter, and he ends up being, kind of bullied and picked on really badly. But he's got a huge heart. So, but the story's narrated by Frank, who's the middle child. He's a fairly cynical 13-year-old. He keeps trying to understand the mystery of what it's like to be an adult. When he sees all around him, he doesn't understand what's going on. And he's constantly trying to figure it out. During the summer of 1961, the whole summer is marked by deaths. There are multiple deaths during this book. Before the book opens, there's a classmate who's been killed by a train while walking on a railroad trestle. That same trestle is a spot from which Frank finds the body of a hobo who has just died, not murder or anything like that. He's just passed away. And they call him the itinerant because they don't want to call him a bum or a vagrant or a hobo. So they call him the itinerant when they bury him. And those aren't the only deaths that are going to happen. Those are not the only visits from the Grim Reaper in this. So New Bremen, Minnesota, where all this is happening, is populated by a number of interesting characters. Gus, who is a comrade in arms of Nathan, and he does odd jobs. He's an alcoholic. Apparently, he and Nathan were in the same unit in the Army, and so they've stuck together throughout the post-war years. And he becomes sort of a surrogate father, second father to Jake and to Frank. Morris Engdahl is the town bully, and every time he came in, I kept thinking of Nelson Muntz from The Simpsons. Going, I don't think that's what Ken Krueger had in mind.
Both of my children had that laugh at some point in their childhood, too. So, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And then there's the Brandt family, which seems to rule the town because they own the local brewery. No, I'm not going to compare it to Duff Beer. I'm not going to do that. And then there's Emil Brandt, who is that renowned composer, but who's been badly damaged from the war. And he lives in this town with his apparently autistic, although they never use that word, sister, Lisa. So while death pervades the novel, the real theme is the presence or the absence of the grace of God. This is a very spiritual novel in a lot of ways. Nathan finds ways to demonstrate that grace in a variety of settings. For example, when he does the funeral for the itinerant and gives him a real humanity that has been denied to this poor guy throughout his life, and they never do find out who he is. His wife, Ruth, though, is suffering from a real lack of grace, and that comes through. She's totally unhappy. She, as a minister's wife, she smokes and drinks in public, and, of course, people are scandalized by that. Of course, this is still 1961. The one gay character in the novel is, of course, killed because that's what always happened in the 50s and 60s in fiction and movies and everything. And there's a lot of this talk, though, about grace and how it affects normal things. And so there's not only the grace, but there's also miracles that occurred during this book. Not like
Mother
manna
Teresa
from heaven,
yeah.
But these small miracles and coincidences and things that helps this time. So what I love is Krueger really captures the essence of 1961. I was just about the same age as Jake in 1961. And so I remember being just as confused by adult life as he is and trying to understand a God that I couldn't comprehend. Everybody talking about him and I having no idea what's really going on. There is a mystery that's at the heart of this book, and in fact, this book won the 2014 Edgar Award for Best Novel of the Year.
Interesting.
But the mystery is almost too simple. When I'm reading this thing, I thought, when the murder occurs, I thought, oh, I think I know what happened. And sure enough, in the last chapter, that's exactly what happened. But that's not what this book's about, really. It's about how death brings grace, and how we handle it creates either a negative or a positive grace. The pleasures of the novel aren't about whodunit. It's about the thoughtful, sentimental, and deeply spiritual ruminations of Ken Krueger as mouthed through his 13-year-old character. It's brilliant. It really is. William Ken Krueger will be here in Delaware at the Barn at Stratford on Wednesday, April 27th. Tickets are still available at Eventbrite, and the links can be found at DelawareLibraryFriends.org or at the events section of DelawareLibrary.org.
And he'll be our guest next week.
And he'll be our guest on the show next week, yes. So, and I will not mention Nelson Muntz while he is our guest. So we will be back to talk about National Poetry Month in just a minute, so stay tuned. Jim Rinaldi, I thought we talked about this. No more snow in April.
Yeah, we don't
What
approve.
is this? Come on.
Right.
You can do better forecasts than this. Okay. I hope if you're listening to the Sunday replay, you're going to say, there was no snow yesterday. What was that all about?
That'd be great.
Yeah, okay.
Fingers crossed.
We're back with Katy Hite, who's the Assistant Branch Manager for Adult Services at the Orange Branch Library. And so, poetry. As I was telling you before the show, I had a creative writing professor who told me I was the worst poet in the history of the English language. So, yeah. Hey, I'm number one.
If you shoot for the moon and you miss, then you just become the worst in the entire English language.
That's right. You end up just space junk. So tell us, what are we doing for National Poetry Month?
Yes. So at the Orange Branch, when you come into our lobby, one of the things you'll see is a probably, I'm going to say easily 7-foot tall tree, our poet tree, which we took very literally. And it is in the lobby, and patrons are welcome to come in and contribute a plethora of poetry leaves. We've already got a handful of contributions. Last night, folks were able to come in and write their own poems to add. But that tree is going to be up through the rest of April, and we're just celebrating what the folks at Orange and anywhere else around Delaware who wants to stop in has to say, and all the poetry that's just waiting to bubble up inside of them and be shared with the community. And we have some really fun examples to share. I'm going to read just a few selections because they are all wonderful so far. Even the first day we had a handful of leaves up. So here are some of our favorites.
I can't wait.
They're wonderful. We have flowers have petals and grass are green. You are the friendliest I'd ever have seen.
Oh, I love it.
Isn't that great? I never have seen. Here's another. Trees. Trees with bees. Beautiful trees.
Accurate.
Yes, indeed.
Almost a haiku.
Thought-provoking. True.
So true. Roses are red. Violets are blue. I love Pokemon, and you should too.
Yeah, that's a persuasive poem.
Indeed.
Roses
Indeed.
are red, violets are blue. Some poems rhyme. This one doesn't.
I don't like that.
Don't like that one. And this one is quickly becoming a crowd favorite.
Yes.
We have Rain, 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 Rain by Sam.
Sam gets it.
Sam knows
You know
what's
what?
up.
I'm gonna come to Orange and I'm gonna write one tomorrow, and it's gonna be snow, 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 snow.
By Nicole.
By Nicole.
And at the program last night, one of the methods of poetry that we were exploring was blackout poetry. If you're not familiar with that, you take a magazine article, a newspaper article, a printout of anything, and you find words within that allow you to create a whole new poem, and then you can black out all of the irrelevant words with Sharpie. So if you'd like to go explore a style of blackout poetry and then put that leaf up on the tree, you're welcome to do so as well.
George is talking about defacing our Check It Out with Percy. I don't know how I feel about that.
Let's see how creative we can get with something else, maybe.
I brought along a poem, two poems by the author that got me into poetry when I was a child, which is Shel Silverstein.
Oh, yes.
Of course, if you've read Where the Sidewalk Ends or The Giving Tree or any of his number of poetry collections, but I thought this one would be a nice one for our listeners. It's titled Invitation. If you are a dreamer, come in. If you are a dreamer, a wisher, a liar, a hoper, a prayer, a magic bean buyer, if you are a pretender, come sit by my fire, for we have some flax golden tales to spin. Come in, come in.
Ooh, that is nice.
I love Shel Silverstein. He's very silly, but he's also very thoughtful.
Very profound.
Very
Indeed.
profound.
Yes.
I was a big fan of Dorothy Parker and Ogden Nash.
Okay.
So, yeah, my feet firmly planted in the 1920s.
You know, I didn't understand poetry a lot until I was in college and I needed several writing credits, and so I took a poetry class, which introduced me to the rules, I guess, or lack thereof in poetry. It was probably the first time that I realized that poems don't have to rhyme, and that also when you read them, you don't break at the end of every line. You can just read it like a story. It just, verse, poem, prose, all the different kind of things. They just all kind of read together. We read some Sylvia Plath.
Nice.
We did go back and do some like children's poetry, some Shel Silverstein. It was really kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
You can go anywhere with that. Mm-hmm. I read a few poems by Maggie Smith, who is local to Columbus area. She came out with a book maybe 3 or 4 years ago called Moving On. And it kind of reads like a bunch of motivational posters in its own way.
Right.
So I grabbed this blurb from Maggie Smith because I thought it was really great. It says, spend time with or talk to someone who loves you exactly as you are. See yourself through their eyes. From this day on, commit to becoming someone who loves you exactly as you are. Keep moving. So every of these platitudes starts with a keep moving, but then she also came out with a companion journal that prompts readers to write their own keep moving kind of motivational pieces. So you kind of tap into your own motivation, which I think is pretty cool.
That is cool.
I like that.
Yeah.
So what got you interested in poetry, Katy?
I think it's just an interesting way to express yourself in really short and concise terms. I mean, certainly there have been epic poems, but being able to just grab onto and succinctly say what you feel or what you mean, because I am not a succinct person in any way. I tend to lean towards the verbose, let's say. So being able to just have someone who can express himself in 5 lines and get to the core of an emotion, I think is really amazing and something I can't do. So I like to learn about it that way. Yeah.
So, and again, I leaned into it from the fun side, like the Shel Silverstein, like the Ogden Nash, like the Dorothy Parker. But I think that the other thing that got me into it was Shakespeare.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because as much as I like the plays, then, of course, there's all the sonnets. And so I enjoyed those, too. So and then also songwriters. When you realize lyrics are basically poetry.
Right.
So you get a lyricist like an Ira Gershwin or a Bob Dylan or Lennon and McCartney, and you realize how that works.
Most of the women who I listened to in my youth in the 90s were like singer-songwriters. They were like Jewel. Or Alanis Morissette or, something like the Tori Amos, Fiona Apple, like all of their lyrics, don't follow just the regular verse, bridge, chorus, just kind of things along those lines. And several of them have their own books of poetry.
I'll take it back a generation from that, and that's Joni Mitchell.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah.
So kind of the godmother of the people you just mentioned.
Exactly. Yes.
So true.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the great thing about poetry too. It can be as incredibly serious and dense as you want it to be. You can go Ezra Pound or T.S. Eliot or that sort of thing, or it can be light and fun and, like you say, just getting right to the heart of the matter in just a dozen words or 10 lines or something.
I have a beef with T.S. Eliot because as I was researching all of my Broadway shows this season, his book of poetry about cats is the inspiration of the musical Cats, and it should not have been.
No, it
that
should
musical
not.
makes no sense.
We're still asking what a jellicle cat is.
To tell me more about jellicle cats? There's a 7-minute opening number, and I still don't understand what a jellicle cat is. What happens at the end? The ascension? I don't know.
Ascension to space, obviously.
That's not obvious?
T.S. Eliot, I got a beef with him.
But not with Andrew Lloyd Webber. Interesting.
Yeah, I know. Andrew, he just never should have found the book.
Right, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you, Katy. And I hope everybody will drop by and see the poetry and even better, add to it.
Please contribute. We'd love to see what you have to say.
And I promise not to add to it because I don't want to ruin the great quality of what you've got there. We got a couple of things coming up this week we want to make sure we touch on. First, thank you to everybody who took advantage of the Friends book sale at Orange Branch Library last weekend. Another record-setting book sale for them. They did over $1,700 in book sales and over $300 in new members, so it was like a $2,100 day. So thank you all very much. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, we've got a good one coming up. It's a virtual program. It's called Parenting in the Digital Age, and it's going to be a great one. You do need to register to get the Zoom link for that. It's on Tuesday at 6:30. It's going to be great for parents of tweens and teens, those who are really getting into technology.
If you were interested in exploring a little bit more about William Kent Krueger, Vicky's Afternoon Book Club this coming Wednesday
at Orange. It's offsite, so it's a Zoom meeting at 1 o'clock, is going to look at his new book, Lightning Strike. So if you're interested in talking a little bit about him before his visit next week after next, that's a good place to get started.
And chicks are coming to the Delaware Main Library. So the eggs will be dropped off on Wednesday the 13th.
Not literally dropped.
No, of course. They will be laid gently in their incubator on Wednesday the 13th at 6 o'clock, and they'll be hatching sometime within 2 weeks after that.
Well, great. So thank you very much for being here, Katy. It's always fun to have you on the show. And I think this was your first time in the new studio,
Yes,
right?
indeed. Nice digs.
Yeah, very nice.
Rain,
digs.
rain, rain,
Rain, rain.
Nicole, always a pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
And Mark, it was great to have you behind the board. And Gage, good luck with the car. And thanks again to the Friends of the Library for sponsoring the show. And we will see you in the stacks.
Rain, rain, rain.
Rain, rain,
Rain. Bye, Sam.